Yeah, so you guys are on your 10th volume 10th album for Buckcherry.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about the inspiration and everything behind it, maybe a little bit about the recording process and
Yeah, here we are after all this time, 24 years and 10 records. It's pretty crazy. We did the same process on this one that we did with Hellbound, the record right before this. And Hellbound was such a great record. And Marty Fredrickson produced both records, and we also do a lot of songwriting with him. We met him way back in the day on the 15 record. We co-wrote Sorry together, and he's been in and out of our lives for a long time now, and just a lovely guy, very talented guy. And so yeah, Stevie and I and Marty wrote the majority of this record as well. I believe 8 songs, and then there was 2 songs spillover from Hellbound, and Marty and I and Stevie kind of rewrote one of them called Turn It On, and This or That Stevie and I wrote, and that was it. And Volume 10 was born. I mean, we had a lot of other songs that didn't make it, but we were very thorough. We always do this songwriting session before we make the record in Nashville, where Stevie and I go there, and it's like guerrilla songwriting for like 9 days. So in 9 days, we wrote 8 songs, and they all made the record. And it was a pretty special time, and very similar to what we did on the Hellbound record as well.
did you guys take a break during the COVID thing? Because I was looking at your discography and it's like you guys 2019 new record, 2021 new record, and really really the only break you've had is maybe for a year during COVID.
Yeah, no breaks. I mean, we even did shows in 2020, not very
Wow.
few, but and the whole 2020 we were writing the Hellbound record as well, so we stay busy, we really occupy our time. I like to be very efficient. I've been self-employed for 24 years, so I'm a highly motivated guy. I got a
Yeah.
lot of people. I got a lot of people just personally depending on me, and then we have all these other personal lives with the other bandmates and crew guys, and it's a big deal, And so, in order to kind of maintain all that, you got to just be in it to win it.
Very working class work ethic. I like
Very
that.
working class,
I
yes.
like that. It's a grind. People don't realize that this is a job, It's like yeah, you're a rock star, but there's a lot of work that goes into it.
Yeah, especially at our level, we've had like very quiet success over the years. It's like when we came onto the scene, we were still not mainstream rock. I mean, when we dropped our first record in 1999, it was, a lot of rap rock going on at the time,
Yeah.
and then we've just never been a part of the mainstream our whole career. So we've had this, we've done all these things, but it's been very quietly in the grand scheme of things. You know what I mean?
When you guys first hit the scene, it was kind of a dark time for music, the early 2000s. Um, I,
Yes.
I I didn't realize how long you guys had been. I want to talk to you a little bit about just your roots and everything, because I didn't even realize that you were a SoCal guy, that you guys are from LA, Anaheim, from Southern
Yeah.
California originally.
I am. The rest of the guys aren't. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Well,
Yeah.
I guess talk a little bit. Did you grow up completely in Southern California, or like I guess talk about a little bit about the kind of the deep history of the band for people who might not know.
Yeah, as far as myself, I was born at the Old Cedars in LA,
Oh, wow.
and my parents got divorced when I was 3. So my mother moved my sister and I down to Orange County, and I grew up in Orange County, sometime in Anaheim Hills, and then sometime in Mission Viejo, California, and then right after high school, I moved back to Hollywood, and just was hustling. I've been in bands since I was 15, and really working hard at it, and working day jobs, and working music at night, and doing everything I could to get where I'm at.
That's awesome, man. One of the other things I just learned this morning, kind of doing a little bit of research on you guys, is that Terry Date produced your first album. I
Yeah,
had
you
no
did.
I had no
Terry Date
idea.
and Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols.
That's amazing too. I just watched the Pistol documentary. I don't know if you've seen it on Hulu.
I
um,
haven't.
about the history of the Sex Pistols, and that guy is a legend, Steve Jones.
Yeah, he's great. I just saw him not too long ago. He's a lovely guy. You know, we had a fun time doing that record for sure. I sang all those vocals right next to Terry Date in the control room. I just was on an SM58 singing right next to him because he told me that's how Chris Cornell recorded Bad Motorfinger, and I was like, I want to do the same thing, you know.
I saw
And
I,
then
I saw Billy
yeah, go ahead.
Corgan saying he did that too. Not, that's, sorry.
Oh, that's cool. And maybe that's just the way Terry does it, but I did that, and right behind me was Steve Jones laying on a couch, you know, giving me his 2 cents every now and again. It was quite a time back then.
You guys kind of broke onto the scene too in a weird time for music when it was kind of like the grunge thing had kind of come and gone already, and it was kind of
Yeah,
like, where do we go from here? And you guys kind of came out with this OG, like just raw rock and roll style. And I
yeah,
just listened to your new single, and I hear a lot of like kind of a return to those roots a little bit. I think in that single, it sounds a lot like kind of the for
with
my
shine your light, good time,
good
or
time.
let's get wild. Yeah, good time for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, we've always kept it real, you know, throughout all of this, you know, 10 years. You know, I mean, uh, there's not a whole lot of people making these type of rock and roll records. You know, not a whole lot. You know,
No.
it's bizarre. Um, who would have thought that, you know, a traditional rock and roll record would be this obscure at this time, but it is, you know. And I'm proud of that, you know, because we've kind of been on our own island and had, you know, success over the years, and we have this great fan base that we can go back to all the time and play live, and we based our reputation on our live show, and it just all worked out. I'm super grateful, you know.
Yeah, you guys also played at I didn't even realize you guys played at Woodstock 99. My initial, interaction with the band was obviously Lit Up when that first blew up and for the movies. But then a couple years ago, quite a while ago, I was a strip club DJ for a minute in another
Let's
life.
go.
And that song "Crazy Bitch" was one of, obviously a
Yeah,
very popular song on that circuit. So it's
yeah.
cool that to hear that you guys kind of have that working class ethic, and you're just out there grinding.
Yeah, I got a lot of those working class stories for you. There are a lot of peaks and valleys in the Buckcherry story, but yeah, it's funny, you know. I mean, if I had, you know, $20 every time somebody called me when that song was happening from a strip club and be like, dude, it's on listen, you know,
Hey,
it's so great.
it's
Yeah, it
getting
was really
played.
great.
That's
No, if
that's as a musician.
I'll ride that wave, you know, to the end for sure.
Totally, totally. Um, so I don't know, like I don't want to like go into uncomfortable topics or anything. And we can always cut things out, or you can tell me like, hey, that's not a subject I want to talk about. But I was curious just because you're the original, the last original member of the band. So obviously
Yeah,
you're the one
OG.
keeping the show on the road. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, talk a little bit about that. Like, how has that process been for you, and what's it been like? Are you still friends with guys like Keith Nelson and some of the other band's members, what do you love about the current lineup of Buckcherry?
Yeah, the current lineup is really fantastic, it's not too current. I mean, you know, Stevie's been with me since 2004, and you know, Kelly's been in the band a long time now. Same with Francis. Billy's the newest guy, and he's already in his third year now. You know, it's the greatest that it's ever been, and you know, there started becoming a revolving door way back after the Time Bomb record. You know, Yogi, Devin, and JB left at different times back then, and it was Keith and I holding down the fort, and that's when we had our hiatus because we just didn't have a band, you know, and we couldn't find the right guys, and everybody wanted like a lot of money, and it was like there's no money, you know, like so it was very challenging, and you know, Keith and I had our run, and that's over, and you know, I just learned from all that stuff that in order to You know, you can't let a bad apple be in a band for too long because it will poison the rest of the band, you know, and that's what we learned by, you know, letting guys go and getting new guys. And every time we've done that throughout the years, Buckcherry always elevated to a new level, and you could feel the energy change in camp for the better and all that kind of stuff. And eventually it had to happen again, you know. And although, you know, Keith and I started this thing from nothing, I mean, it is what it is. People change and lives get crazy over the years. You know, people just, you know, have other things that they want to do with their life, you know. And I've always been very passionate about music. It's still to this day the only thing that I really love, you know, and I really love what I do, and I'm going to continue to do that. And um, yeah, we just had to make changes, and now I feel like we're making the best BC records of all time for sure.
Yeah, and you got to roll with the punches too, and it's cool that you guys have. I also feel like, you know, it's come full circle where, you know, I'm probably your age or maybe even a little bit older, but it's kind of like music when I was a kid in the 90s was grunge and stuff, and then it kind of got on to into this very electronic world. But I see even with like my son and his generation, and it's kind of going back to, there's a backlash against all the processed kind of computerized nonsense. And I really feel
Right.
like bands like Buckcherry and raw, you know, live rock and roll performances are kind of coming back into vogue.
Yeah, I think we have a, you know, because of Spotify and streaming, we get a lot of new people coming to our show, young people, you know, and it's really cool for us, you know. And that's the way they get their music. It's not through terrestrial radio or,
Yeah.
you know, MTV or any of that kind of stuff, you know. So um it's kind of been, it kind of went back to like where the, you know, like the 70s, to where, you know, it's not radio driven, and it's about, you know, putting out a record every couple of years and being on the road.
Yeah, getting in front of people. It's funny you say that because I went to a show a couple weeks ago for this kind of indie band called the Bobby Lees, and I I turned to this guy and I just kind of said, "Hey, just out of curiosity," because I went there, you know, for Brutal Planet. You know, a publicist wanted me to cover it, and so
Right.
I asked this guy, how did you find out about this band?" And he said, I heard them in a playlist on Spotify, and I followed them.
Yeah.
And when they came, Spotify sent me a notification they were playing, and here I am. So I
Yeah.
totally agree. It's almost
Yeah.
like the technology has taken music back to its roots, where it's kind of like, you know, you really have to get invested in a band and you know, be a part of it, the live show, the record, everything.
Yeah. And kids still really want to do that, like teenagers, you know, because I have teenagers, and my daughter has she's 17, and she has all these playlists of her artists that aren't on the radio I've never even heard of. She goes, Dad, I want you to hear some of the songs that I like. I was like, okay. And she puts it on, and then I'll hear like, you know, there'll be a few turds, and then a good song will come on, and I'll be like, hey, who's this? Like, do they
Hmm.
have a record deal? And she's like, no. I'm like, man, this is a good song. It's a great singer. You know, like somebody's going to scoop this person up. I mean, this is amazing, you know, like stuff like that. And she's just down. And then before you know it, you'll go to like some, like a Roxy show or something with some of these artists, and it'll be sold out. And you're like, I don't even know who this is. You know, this is incredible. Like,
Yeah.
how do all these people know who this is? You know?
It's very siloed again. It's kind of like it's very targeted. The algorithm will send you stuff that, and it also democratized music in a lot of ways where, you know, before, to get to a level where you have a big audience, you had to have a record label behind you, and now it's kind of like you can make a record in your bedroom and blow up. So
Yeah, it's cool.
on that note, one of the things I always like to ask people is what are your primary influences? Like, what would you say inspired you? What bands or what events inspired you to go down this path to become a musician?
Oh, you know, like I said, I grew up in Orange County, California. When I was a kid, I was really into surfing. I wanted to be a professional surfer. That was like my first passion. And I was so dedicated. I lived inland. I would go from Anaheim Hills to Newport Beach, 32nd Street, and surf as much as I could. You could put your surfboard on the bus. I would take like 5 transfers just to go surfing, and I did that pretty religiously. And then cut to, I moved to Mission Viejo halfway through high school, and there was only one band in the school, and I just happened to be surfing with the drummer. He was a surfer too, and we were just out in the water, and I wasn't even in a band. I had just a huge punk rock collection, and I was really into music, and he's like, "Hey man, we need a singer. You want to come down and audition?" And I was like, "Sure." And at that time, I had a real knack for writing. I would write poetry and just creative writing, just anything. I had a knack for writing, and so, anyways, I went to that first rehearsal. I had my grandfather buy me a microphone. I was like, I don't have a microphone, Grandpa. Can you buy me a right? And he bought me a microphone from the Federated Group, right? And it it wasn't even like XLR. It just had a cord coming out of it, and that was like permanently on the
Like
microphone.
the Radio Shack
And
ones.
yeah, yeah. And there was no PA at the rehearsal. I just plugged it into a guitar amp, and I'm screaming through this guitar amp, and my voice is all distorted, and we were doing like cover songs, and then I don't know, I just had the wherewithal to go, hey, fuck all these cover songs. I was like, let's just write an original right now. And they're like, okay. And I was like, yeah, what kind of, give me some riffs. I would say to guitar player, you got any good riffs? And he kind of rambled through some riffs and landed on something I liked. I go, I like that. Let's go with that. And then I just got on the ground and I wrote a song, right? I just wrote it out, melodies, everything. Right then, wrote a song. And I was just like, bing, the light bulb went on, and I'm like, this is it. This is all I want to do. You know, when I left there, I didn't tell those guys, but I had this moment of clarity, and I'm like, that's it. Surfing went in the back seat, and I I dedicated my life to music at that point.
Continuing on that, how did Buckcherry come about? How did you meet the founding members of Buckcherry, and how did that all kind of spin up?
Yeah, I had been in a band for about 4 years in LA called Slamhound, and it was a great band, but we were all really fucked up, and it was hell on wheels, and kind of just imploded there at the end. But we had a independent record deal at one point, and then the label lost all the money. We made a record and never got released. Yada yada yada. Anyways, here I am, bandless, and just I was getting sober at that point in time, because I had to clean up my act. I was a mess, and so I was just kind of really concentrating on sobriety. And I talked my mom into buying me a 4-track. Told her I'd pay her back. I got a little 4-track recorder in my apartment, and just started writing songs with the drum machine and guitar, vocals, and anyways, I think I gave a demo to somebody, and I was getting tattooed by this guy, Kevin Quinn, who's tattooed most of my body. And his place was across the street from Keith, where he was employed at the time. And Keith was getting tattooed by Kevin, and
Was
and
this in
I was just
Hollywood?
saying, yeah, Hollywood. And then Kevin's like, yeah, why don't you meet this guy Keith, and see if you guys, because he's looking for a band. And I was already really kind of gun shy with, musicians at that time. I had had my fill, and Keith, I think, was the same way at the time. And so we just kind of eased into it. I said, come over to my house. Let's see if we have any songwriting chemistry. Let's just write a song on the 4-track. And we wrote a few songs, and there was a song called Clues that never got on a record, but we wrote it, and we just thought it was so great. And that was it. I'm like, all right, let's go. Let's get this thing together. And then just started finding the other band members and started working really hard on what became Buckcherry.
At what point did you guys, because you guys you guys were huge for a minute. I remember, seeing you guys on the cover of Guitar Magazine and everything the late. At what point did you know, hey, this is going to take off?
Um, we didn't, like me and the bass player, we had a phone gig. We were doing phone sales, and we were managing the band all the way up until we got signed. So basically, we had the idea where let's not play ourselves out in Hollywood. So we decided to every weekend we would go down, to Southern Cal, like to San Diego, and then we would send our packages out. We'd send like an 8x10 and a cassette, 2-song cassette, and we'd send them to clubs, and we would book a club down in San Diego, and we'd go down there and play for, 30 people. And then we come back to LA. And then the next weekend we go up Northern California and we play for 30 people. We come back to LA and then so on. And we go back down to San Diego and there'd be 150 people there, and we started building this following all around LA. Well, there started becoming this buzz pretty quickly about us. And so we met with an entertainment attorney because we heard that, you gotta do showcases to get a record deal, and we talked to this guy, Alan Mintz. May he rest in peace. He's not alive anymore, but he was a great guy. And he's like, okay, we're gonna get he was in touch with the labels and getting the A&R people down. He goes, we're gonna do like 3 shows in LA, or I don't know, 6 or 3, or I forget how many it was. And so build up your following, and we're only gonna do like 3, and we're gonna have everybody there, along with all, the people and we're like, okay. And so that's what we did. We did a show at the Viper Room, sold out, and there was a lot of A&R there. And what we did was we always gave 2-song cassettes to just everybody who attended the shows prior to that. So everybody knew this song Lawless and Lulu that was on the first record, right? So we're playing, we're an unsigned band, and we're playing at the Viper Room, and we get to Lawless and Lulu, and everybody's singing it like we're in an arena, right? And later on, after talking to Michael Goldstone, he said, yeah, that really was a big point for all the A&R people, because they couldn't believe that everybody was singing this song that they had no idea what it was, as if it was a single, and that really turned their heads. And then all of a sudden we did a show the following couple weeks at the Whiskey, and it was sold out. And we were walking up from the Whiskey, and we knew Michael Goldstone. He had signed Pearl Jam and Rage Against the Machine, just to name a few. He's really, and DreamWorks had just started, and he was we were like walking up the hill there from the Whiskey, and we had all of our just had our equipment, loading our stuff in, and he's like, hey, my name's Michael, and I just wanted to introduce myself. And we're like, we know who you are, and he's like, I was wondering if you guys want to do a record together. And we were like, what? Yeah, we do, and then, it just kind of started from there. But there was like a little bit of a bidding war, but DreamWorks is where we landed.
That's really cool. How did you guys land on Terry Date as a producer? I thought that was interesting because most of the stuff he had done has kind of a very specific sound, the Deftones and Prong and Pantera.
Right.
And it obviously you guys have a hard sound, but it's not the same. But like, was that a label thing, or did you guys specifically pick him?
It was a label thing. Originally, we went in with Dave Bianco, and he was got to produce the record. And actually, there's a song called "Baby" on the first record, and that was his production, because we didn't re-record it with Terry. But all of a sudden, Michael Goldstone pulled the plug on that. He wanted it to sound different. He just had an idea, and this was our first go around, so we were kind of at the mercy of all that. And he thought Terry Date would be a good fit, and he actually was. And Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols co-produced it as well with him, and it turned out good.
Yeah, that was a landmark record, because again, at the time it was kind of like it was all this like rap rock, what me and my friends called dun dun wee bands, because all the riffs go dun dun wee, And so you guys came out in that, and it was just like this breath of fresh air, this like raw, like Aerosmith, AC/DC type rock and roll band, you know?
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely what served us, and also went against us at times, in our career. But yeah, for sure, it was a breath of fresh air at that time.
If you could give any advice to young bands coming up, what would it be? Because I mean, obviously, you've got a long career. You've been doing this for a long time successfully, and if you
Yeah,
could pass on advice to a guy, a younger musician, guy or girl, what would you tell them?
I think the hardest thing for bands once they start, you know, making a living at music is putting on their business hat, taking off their artist hat and putting on their business hat. It's very hard. And, I went through a lot of growing pains with that myself over the years. And then having to make member changes, which is sometimes very necessary, that's difficult, So what I would, tell somebody young is to, listen to your gut, make sure you're passionate about what you're doing, work hard, and make changes where changes are needed, because, any bad person on your team or in your band is going to eventually infect, the whole situation, and you got to like keep that in check. And as long as you do that, just be fearless.
Great, great advice. So I'm kind of jumping around here, but I'm like looking at my notes, and I wrote down something about the song "Too Drunk" that was replaced with a Highway Star cover.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Like what I read a little bit about it, but I didn't quite understand the controversy behind it. It was kind of a leaked song, or what
What, too
was,
drunk?
yeah, was
No,
why did why
too drunk was a single. I don't know what the issue was with the label at the time, but I know our manager just said, let's uh let's just re-release it with, do Highway Star. And we made a great video with Highway Star, and that was fine with us because Too Drunk was already out there. And I love Too Drunk, so
yeah, it's a
but
great song.
I don't know what the label had an issue with the song at some point. That's the mailman. That's my dog.
I love dogs, man.
Hey,
So
yeah,
I
more
don't have
dogs,
any at
less
the moment,
people.
but so I
Yeah.
won't keep you too much longer. I guess another thing I like to ask people, just because again, you're someone who's been doing this for a long time, is what inspires you to keep making music, and are there any new artists out that you could name drop that you really are into what they're doing?
What inspires me to make music is passion. I still have a love for it. I really get excited about a new song that I really love to hear. I still buy singles of artists that I like. I'm always looking to be inspired myself. And then I want to continue to be a student of the game and grow. And I really love building something from nothing. I like to challenge myself, and making a record is challenging. To get it over the finish line and for it to be great, and all those things, it's still very exciting for me, and so that's why I keep doing it. And what was the other part of the question?
I guess I just like to ask artists if are there any bands, old or new, like what are you listening to these days? Are there artists that you would name drop that you really like what they're doing? Other artists?
I don't really listen to that much new rock. I mean, I'm sorry to say, because I don't
There's
know, it
not a
just
lot.
doesn't interest me as much. I haven't heard really stuff that I don't know. I listen to a lot of pop music and hip hop. Pop music is vocal driven, melody driven, and that's what I want to learn. I want to learn how to write great melodies, and it's vocal driven and written by some of the greatest songwriters in the world. So that's where I go to. And then for danger and stuff that intimidates me, I go to hip hop, because it's dangerous. There's not like, rock and roll hasn't been dangerous for a long time. I'm sorry to say, in my opinion, it's just been kind of bland, and there's no like rock guitar heroes and frontmen, and so it's really hard for me you know, to get into it. But you know, I'll listen to like classic rock still, you know, and I still like all that old stuff, and I'll go there just to, you know, listen to rock songs, good rock songs.
That's such a great point about rock not being dangerous anymore. I feel like that kind of has been left with like the comedy world, or like you don't really hear anything edgy. There's nothing, you know, there's nothing crazy or dangerous in rock right now.
It
Um,
sounds so computerized to me, rock music now. It's all cut to a grid and it's it's very I don't know. I don't feel the soul, you know, and there used to be a lot of soul in rock music, you know.
yeah, and I think there's we touched on this earlier, but I do feel like there's a backlash to that kind of mechanical nature of music. I see it with my son's generation. He plays in a band, you know, and there's these kids are coming out to live shows at his age and moshing and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it makes me feel good to see that.
Yeah. That's cool.
Okay, so last thing I would say is, or last thing I wanted to ask you about is, with the new record, what would you tell fans about the new record? If you could just, you know, say anything about it, what are you excited
The
about?
new record is volume 10. The new record's volume 10. It drops June 2nd. And you can pre-order it right now and get 3 songs: Good Time, Let's Get Wild, and Shine Your Light. And it's so good. You're going to be very pleased with it from top to bottom. And come out to the rock show. We're playing all year, a lot of shows. So get involved and get into the rest of our catalog as well, and come have a good time.
Awesome. Well, you guys are gonna be out here in Southern California in December, so I'll hope to catch you guys then. I don't
Yeah, come say hello.
Definitely. And just really thankful for you taking the time to talk to us today, man. And you know, keep it up. Hope to see you out there and
Thank you, man.
take good care.
All right, be good.
Thank you, brother.
Cheers.